In the winter silence of a European battlefield, long before victory or defeat had taken shape, something small moved across the broken ground. It was not a tank nor a massive machine of steel and terror. It was only a light vehicle, open to the wind, with a simple engine that hummed rather than roared. At first, German soldiers watched it from a distance, confused. Then they laughed. To them, this American Jeep looked like a toy that had wandered into a world built for giants. But war has a way of teaching lessons in strange ways. And sometimes the smallest things become the most powerful symbols. The Jeep did not try to impress anyone. It did not need heavy armor or a giant gun. It simply moved. It climbed mud that swallowed boots. It crossed rivers where motorcycles failed. It carried men who were scared, cold, and tired. It carried messages that could change the next hour of battle. And it did all this without asking for anything more than fuel, hands on the wheel, and a path to follow. Perhaps this is where the Real story begins, not with explosions or loud victories, but with a quiet question. How could something so small, so simple, matter so much in a war filled with machines built to intimidate? Why did German officers first mock the Jeep and later depend on it? And how did this little American vehicle end up shaking the confidence of an army that believed engineering was its greatest strength? As snow drifted through ruined villages and smoke rose from distant fires, German soldiers saw more Jeeps slipping through forests, climbing frozen hills, and appearing in places they believed impossible to reach. The laughter slowly disappeared. Whispered debates replaced it. And then, something even more surprising happened. The German army began capturing these Jeeps. They studied them. They kept them. They used them. They needed them. You can almost imagine the moment of silence when a German officer sat inside a captured Jeep for the first time. His hand touches the steering wheel. The seat is simple, almost rough. Nothing looks impressive. And yet the machine feels ready, flexible, alive. Maybe he thinks quietly, "How did we miss this?" This was more than a vehicle. It was a message, a reminder that sometimes strength is not loud. Sometimes power is not heavy. Sometimes the thing that moves the fastest, bends the most, and carries people where they never thought they could go, becomes the thing that changes everything. In the shadows of war, where fear shaped every decision and every life could turn in a single second, the Jeep became a strange companion, a survivor, a helper, a quiet challenger to old ideas. It showed the Germans that their vision of the battlefield was incomplete. That agility mattered. That speed mattered. That adaptation mattered more than pride. And so, as we look back at this forgotten part of history, we return to that first moment. A small Jeep rolling across a frozen field while soldiers laugh at it. They did not know that this simple machine would soon reshape their tactics, their confidence, and even their understanding of war itself. Sometimes the world changes not with a roar, but with a steady, humble engine moving forward through the cold. The story of the Jeep cannot be understood without first stepping into the world that existed before it arrived. A world shaped by cold winters, muddy fields, broken roads, and a war that pushed every machine, every soldier, and every idea to its limits. To understand why this small American vehicle became so important, we must first understand the land, the weather, the roads, and the ways armies moved through Europe during the early years of World War II. Imagine long, endless fields soaked with rain. Imagine deep forests where light barely reaches the ground. Imagine narrow village streets filled with rubble, with walls cracked from the pressure of artillery. This was the battlefield. Nothing was clean or easy. Even simple movement, walking, riding, transporting supplies, became difficult and dangerous. Soldiers did not only fight the enemy, they fought the land itself. Europe's weather added to the struggle. In winter, cold winds cut through uniforms and froze water inside canteens. Snow turned quiet forests into white traps, where every footstep sank deep and every sound carried far. In spring, the snow melted and turned the earth into thick mud that swallowed boots, wheels, and hope. In summer, dust rose like smoke, blinding eyes and coating engines with dirt. In autumn, rainstorms flooded rivers and washed away roads. And through all of this, the German army tried to move fast. They believed speed was the key to winning the war. Their early victories came from rapid attacks, quick breakthroughs, and mechanical force. They had strong tanks, powerful trucks and fast motorcycles with sidecars. These machines looked impressive, sounded mighty, and appeared unstoppable. But the battlefield was not built for them. German tanks were heavy and often became stuck in mud or snow. Their fuel needs were high and roads were narrow. Their trucks were strong, but they were large and not made for rough ground. Their motorcycles were fast, but they tipped over easily and could not handle forests, hills, or broken land. Germany had built machines to win a perfect war on perfect roads. But war is never perfect, and European roads were never peaceful. On the other side of the world, American engineers were thinking differently. They understood something simple: war needs flexibility. War needs movement. War needs a machine that can go almost anywhere with little effort. Before the Jeep arrived in Europe, the American Army tested it on deserts, mountains, forests, and farms. They drove it over rocks, through rivers, and across steep hills. They learned how it behaved in sand, mud, snow, and dust. And they discovered that this little vehicle had something special: a spirit of resilience. It did not break easily. It did not complain. It did not need perfect roads or perfect conditions. It simply went forward. Meanwhile, in Europe, German soldiers were beginning to face problems they had not planned for. Their supply lines stretched across long distances. Their vehicles slowed down. Their engines broke under pressure. Their soldiers grew tired of pushing heavy machines out of mud or dragging motorcycles out of snow. This was the world into which the Jeep arrived. A world that needed something simple, reliable, and adaptable. A world where speed and strength looked different than anyone expected. As we move deeper into this landscape, imagine standing at the edge of a European forest in 1942. The smell of pine mixes with the sharp scent of burning fuel from distant engines. You hear snow crunch under boots. You hear metal clatter as soldiers adjust their equipment. The air is cold enough to burn your lungs when you breathe in. Now imagine a sound that breaks this harsh silence. Not the roar of a tank, not the cough of a motorcycle engine, but a soft, steady hum. A Jeep appears from behind a group of trees, bouncing lightly over roots and frozen ground. It does not slide. It does not struggle. It simply moves like water finding a path through stone. For the American soldiers who rode in it, the Jeep was a friend. It carried letters from home. It carried fresh food, ammunition, medical kits, and sometimes wounded soldiers who didn't have time to wait for larger vehicles. It guided troops through dark forests at night with only a faint light, making it harder for enemies to spot them. It turned impossible paths into open roads. But for German soldiers watching from a hill or a trench, this sight was confusing. How could something so small travel where their machines failed? How could it climb hills their motorcycles feared? How could it cross fields their trucks avoided? At first they looked at it with curiosity, then with disbelief, then with something deeper: concern. War teaches soldiers to respect the things that work, even if they do not look powerful, even if they do not look serious, even if they look like toys. To truly understand this moment, picture the contrast on the battlefield. On one side, heavy German vehicles struggled to move through mud that clung to their wheels like glue. Engines roared and smoke poured out. Soldiers shouted, pushed, and pulled, trying to free the stuck machines. Every minute wasted increased danger. Every delay weakened their advantage. On the other side, a Jeep rolled past quietly. Light, flexible, calm, almost peaceful. It did not demand attention. It simply did its job and disappeared into the trees. This difference became clearer with every passing month. When snow fell, the Jeep kept moving. When spring rains turned roads to rivers of mud, the Jeep kept moving. When forests grew thick and dark, the Jeep still found a way through. This was not just about engineering. It was about understanding war at its most human level. Soldiers needed something they could trust. Something that would not break when they needed it most. Something that could carry them away from danger or toward hope. The land itself began to highlight the Jeep's strength. In the mountain regions, narrow paths twisted around cliffs. Heavy machines could not follow them. The Jeep could. In swampy areas, ground sank under weight. Trucks stalled. Sidecars tipped. The Jeep danced across the surface. In ruined cities, where streets were blocked with rubble, tanks struggled to turn. But the Jeep slipped through gaps and alleys like a shadow. And slowly, quietly, word spread across German units. They had seen something unusual. Something unexpected. Something that felt wrong, as if the enemy had created a machine that understood the land better than they did. The German army, known for its engineering brilliance, began to face a new question. What if the enemy had built something that solved the problems they had ignored? As more jeeps appeared across battlefields, German commanders realized what was happening. America had not created a machine to look powerful. They had created a machine to survive, to adapt, to help soldiers reach places where war was decided not by size or strength, but by timing, position, and speed. This was the world shaped by roads that melted, forests that trapped, hills that broke engines, and weather that punished every mistake. It was a world where the jeep fit perfectly, almost naturally, as if the land itself welcomed it. Before long, the story of the jeep became impossible to deny. Every captured soldier spoke of it. Every German mechanic who inspected one shook his head in quiet surprise. And every German officer who watched one from a distance felt something he could not admit easily: respect. Because in this harsh landscape, designed by nature and destroyed by war, the jeep did something simple yet extraordinary. It kept moving. And in war, movement is life. The land tested every machine, every soldier, every idea. And in the slow, steady beating heart of this landscape, a new truth began to form. A truth that would soon reshape strategies, challenge pride, and change the way Germany fought the war. All because one small machine understood the battlefield better than anyone expected. To understand how the jeep truly changed the German battlefield, we must return to the early years of World War II, when each nation believed it understood war better than its enemies. Germany believed speed came from heavy power, disciplined formations, and machines built with precision. America believed speed came from flexibility, adaptability, and teamwork between humans and machines. When the war began, Germany introduced the world to Blitzkrieg, the lightning war. Tanks roared across open fields. Motorcycles zipped between formations. Trucks carried supplies at high speed. For a moment, it looked unstoppable. Poland fell quickly. France fell soon after. Even experienced generals around the world asked the same question: how can anyone stop this? But hidden beneath these early victories was a silent weakness. Blitzkrieg worked only where the ground was firm and the roads were strong. The moment the land turned wild, uneven, or unpredictable, the German army slowed down. Their tanks, though powerful, were heavy. Their trucks needed clear roads. Their motorcycles needed balance and space. Behind the scenes, German officers began filing reports. Engines overheated. Tires tore apart. Transmissions cracked. Soldiers grew tired of pushing heavy machines out of mud. Very slowly, a troubling idea appeared in the minds of German planners: our army is fast, but only where the land allows us to be. Meanwhile, across the ocean, America was preparing differently. Before the jeep existed, the American military knew it had a problem. Soldiers needed a vehicle that could replace motorcycles, sidecars, horses, and light trucks all at once. They needed something small yet strong, simple yet reliable. So the U.S. government sent a challenge to American car companies: build a light reconnaissance car that can go anywhere, survive anything, and carry everything. It sounded impossible, especially in the short time they were given. But several companies stepped forward. Among them was Willis Overland, a smaller company with a powerful engine design. Their approach was simple: build a machine that does not show off, build a machine that works. Tests began in rough terrain. Steep hills, thick forests, deep sand, long climbs, rapid descents. The vehicle had to pass through all of it. And when the tests were complete, military officers stood silently around the jeep, almost surprised. It did not look impressive. Yet it had passed every challenge. Soon thousands were being produced. And when American troops arrived in Europe, the jeep came with them, like a loyal partner ready to face the unknown. German soldiers first encountered the jeep during small skirmishes in North Africa. At first they were confused. How was this tiny machine keeping up with larger vehicles? How did it cross soft sand that trapped even light German cars? They captured a few early models, inspected them, and laughed. "This is not a real military vehicle," some officers said. "It is too small, too open, too simple." But war has its own way of revealing truth. As the months passed, Germany faced new fronts. In the east, roads disappeared into forests. In the north, snow and ice ruled the terrain. In Italy, mountains created impossible paths. And everywhere, the jeep appeared, climbing hills that made German engines scream, crossing muddy rivers without sinking, and reaching front lines faster than any German vehicle of similar size. German commanders noticed something else. The jeep was not just a vehicle. It was a tool. It carried radios. It pulled small cannons. It took wounded men to safety. It brought fresh troops directly to the fight. It delivered messages faster than horses. It delivered hope faster than trucks. This made the German high command uneasy. Not because the Jeep was powerful, but because it solved problems that German machines could not. German engineers soon inspected captured Jeeps closely. They wrote reports describing the Jeep's design. They noted the engine's high torque, the low weight, the four-wheel drive system that allowed equal power to all wheels, and the mechanical simplicity that allowed any soldier to repair it with basic tools. They discovered that the Jeep's strength came not from heavy armor or complex systems, but from a combination of clever design choices that worked together smoothly. A German officer famously wrote, "The American Jeep is not a masterpiece of engineering. It is a masterpiece of purpose." That sentence spread quietly through military circles. More German units began capturing Jeeps whenever they could. Some painted over the American markings. Some replaced the stars with German crosses. Soon, German scouts, officers, and even elite units were using captured Jeeps for missions. They drove them through forests, over hills, and across ruined towns. And the more they used them, the more they realized how much they had underestimated this strange little machine. There were even moments when German troops preferred the Jeep over their own vehicles. Reports show that German officers often fought among themselves over who could keep a captured Jeep for their unit. The need was that strong. But why did the Jeep matter so much? The answer is simple: mobility. Mobility is the heartbeat of war. A soldier who moves faster than the enemy sees more, survives more, and controls more. A vehicle that can move in any terrain gives its army a quiet advantage that grows larger with every mile. During key battles, the Jeep helped American forces reach positions that surprised the Germans. It allowed artillery observers to climb hills quickly and mark enemy targets. It allowed supply lines to stay alive even when roads were destroyed. It helped commanders travel safely between units. It carried ammunition directly to frontline trenches. It even carried chaplains, nurses, and medics to wounded soldiers on dangerous paths. The Jeep did not win battles alone. But it changed how battles were fought. It introduced a new rhythm to the battlefield. A new speed. A new expectation. The Germans watched this with growing discomfort. They saw American troops arriving faster. They saw Jeeps weaving through forests while German trucks struggled to turn around. They saw soldiers who seemed to appear where no vehicle should be able to go. And as the war dragged on, German confidence, once built on the belief that their engineering was unmatched, began to crack. The Jeep exposed the limits of German machines. It revealed gaps in German planning. It taught German commanders a lesson no one wanted to hear: a war cannot be won with strength alone. It must also be won with adaptability. One of the most surprising discoveries came when German engineers realized how easy the Jeep was to repair. A German mechanic once told his commander, "This vehicle repairs itself." He meant that the parts were so simple and strong that even damaged vehicles could be fixed quickly. German vehicles were impressive but took long hours to repair, with complex parts and precision tools. The Jeep needed only a wrench, a hammer, and a soldier with basic knowledge. Slowly, Germany began to understand that America had built not just a machine, but a philosophy, a way of thinking about war that valued mobility over power, practicality over prestige, and the soldier's needs over the engineer's pride. And as thousands of Jeeps spread across Europe like small insects that never got tired, the German command realized something that would haunt them until the end of the war. They had underestimated their enemy not in size but in simplicity. They had built an army for perfect conditions. America had built a vehicle for real ones. In this difference, the future of the war quietly shifted. Now pause for a moment and imagine yourself standing on that battlefield. Not as a historian looking back, but as a soldier living inside the chaos of those days. The cold in your hands. The weight of your gear. The long silence before the next order. The fear that rises whenever engines stop working or help arrives too late. Think about the machines around you, the ones you depend on to carry you forward or pull you out of danger. How much would you trust them? How far would you go with them? And how would you feel if you saw the enemy using something small and simple that kept moving while your own machine struggled? Put yourself in the boots of a German soldier watching a Jeep climb a muddy hill that your motorcycle could never reach. Or imagine being an officer who has spent years believing your country built the best machines in the world, only to see your troops secretly prefer a captured American vehicle because it simply gets the job done. Ask yourself a simple question. In war, what matters more, pride or practicality? And then imagine this. If you were given a chance to choose your escape vehicle during an attack, would you choose the heavier one that often gets stuck, or the small one that always finds a way through? These questions are not only about history. They are about human nature. We often admire things that look powerful. We trust things that feel strong. But sometimes, the real strength lies in the things we overlook, the tools we do not appreciate until the moment we need them the most. So think about the machines in your own life, the systems, the ideas, the beliefs that guide you. Do they work only when conditions are perfect? Or can they carry you through storms, failures, and unexpected paths? Perhaps this is why the story of the Jeep matters even today. It is not only a story about metal and engines. It is a story about adaptation, about humility, about learning to respect the small things that make a big difference when life becomes difficult. As we return to the battlefield and continue our journey, let one question stay in your mind. If you were fighting a war for survival, which kind of machine would you trust? The one that looks powerful or the one that proves itself in every terrain? War is often told through the movement of armies or the strategies of commanders. But beneath every plan and every machine are human beings, tired, hopeful, frightened, determined. To truly understand how the Jeep reshaped the battlefield, we must step into the lives of the men who rode in it, repaired it, depended on it, and sometimes survived because of it. Picture a young American soldier, no older than 20, sitting in the driver's seat of a Jeep for the first time. His hands are stiff from the cold. His heart beats a little faster than usual. He looks at the simple dashboard, no fancy controls, no complicated gauges, just the basics. He starts the engine, and the quiet hum gives him a small sense of comfort. The Jeep feels open, almost exposed, but also free. Feels like movement. It feels like possibility. For soldiers like him, the Jeep became a companion. It carried them across dangerous ground, far from safety and far from home. It took them into forests where shadows hid enemy soldiers. It took them through muddy paths where bigger vehicles got stuck. It took them over steep hills where the world seemed to tilt beneath their feet. Sometimes, after long marches, when the ground trembled from distant artillery, the Jeep was the only thing that felt steady. It became a small piece of familiarity in a world that changed every minute. For the medics who worked behind the lines, the Jeep became something even more precious. Before the Jeep, rescuing wounded soldiers from the front was slow and difficult. Stretchers had to be carried by hand or moved on larger trucks that could not always reach the injured. Many soldiers were lost simply because help could not arrive in time. But the Jeep changed that. Medics strapped stretchers to the back, tied down medical bags, and drove directly into danger. The Jeep bounced over shell holes and broken branches, weaving around destroyed buildings and burned-out vehicles. Every minute saved was a life saved. Many soldiers who survived their wounds later said the same thing. If the Jeep had not come, I would have died there. The Jeep did not only carry soldiers and wounded men. It carried stories. Letters from families. Packages from loved ones. Maps that decided the fate of entire units. Radios that carried messages across miles of land. Chaplains riding to comfort frightened boys. Officers inspecting frontline positions. Scouts searching for hidden enemy movements. Each journey told a different emotional truth. One American scout remembered a moment when his Jeep rolled quietly through a dark forest at night. The cold air wrapped around him like a blanket. The headlights were dimmed to tiny slits to avoid enemy attention. He could hear only the whisper of the engine and the soft crunch of leaves. He later said, "I felt alone, but I also felt safe." The Jeep was not just a machine. It felt like a friend traveling with me. Now imagine the German soldier watching all of this. He stands in the mud. His boots are heavy with water. His motorcycle lies on its side behind him, its wheels buried deeper every minute. His hands hurt from trying to lift it. The rain falls harder. He hears engines in the distance, not German trucks or tanks but something lighter, something quick. And then he sees it, a Jeep climbing the slope easily, carrying 3 American soldiers who look as tired as he feels. For a moment he does not feel anger. He feels confusion. And then something deeper, a quiet sense of respect. German soldiers began to notice patterns. Jeeps arrived fast. They left fast. They appeared in places that should have been unreachable. In one diary found after the war, a German soldier wrote, "The Americans have a small car that moves like a mountain goat. We cannot catch it. We cannot predict it. It seems to go wherever it wants." Another soldier wrote about capturing his first Jeep. He described sitting inside it, feeling the engine vibrate gently beneath him. "It felt alive," he wrote. "Not powerful but alive. As if it knew the land better than we did." German officers were more cautious in their words, but even they could not hide their surprise. Reports describe jeeps being used by German scout units, artillery spotters, and even high-ranking officers who preferred them over larger staff cars because they were faster and more reliable. One German officer admitted privately, "We laughed at it first. But now we fight over who gets to keep one. It goes where our machines fear to go." These emotional reactions slowly changed the battlefield atmosphere. American soldiers felt growing confidence. They saw their little vehicle succeed again and again. They trusted it in the same way they trusted their own boots. Something that might get worn, might get muddy, but would carry them where they had to go. German soldiers, on the other hand, felt a shift inside themselves. They had always believed in their engineering superiority. But now, a simple American machine was proving them wrong. This was not just a blow to their tactics. It was a blow to their pride. War affects the mind as much as the body. When soldiers lose confidence in their machines, they lose confidence in their movement and therefore in their safety. When they lose confidence in their safety, fear grows stronger. Fear slows decision-making. Fear breaks momentum. The Jeep did not create fear on its own, but it opened a small crack in German confidence, and that crack grew wider as the war continued. Now imagine you are walking through a small European village that has been fought over for days. The buildings are shattered. Smoke rises from broken roofs. The ground is littered with debris. You hear soldiers calling out orders. You hear distant explosions. And then, through this chaos, a jeep appears, rattling over the stones, dust swirling behind it. Inside it are two American soldiers, tired faces, helmets covered in dirt. They are not thinking about victory or glory. They are thinking about the next hour, the next turn, the next stretch of road that might be safe or might be deadly. The jeep gives them a small sense of control in a world where control has become rare. Now imagine the same scene from the eyes of a German civilian, watching from behind a cracked window. The jeep passes. The soldier inside looks up for a moment. He does not look threatening. He looks human, young, uncertain, carrying the weight of duty. The civilian realizes something. The war is being carried by ordinary people in ordinary bodies, riding in ordinary machines that somehow become extraordinary in moments of pressure. Even in the darkest hours of war, the jeep carried small sparks of humanity. Soldiers held onto its sides as they traveled to dangerous missions. They joked around it when they had a few minutes to breathe. They argued about who should drive it. They gave it names like Lucky, Old Faithful, and the Mule. Many jeeps stayed with the same units for months. Soldiers became attached to them. When a jeep broke down or was destroyed, it felt like losing a partner. But perhaps the most emotional role of the jeep came during evacuations. Late in the war, when American and German forces fought fiercely in forests and mountains, many wounded men were trapped under fire. Medics risked their lives to reach them. Jeeps became the fastest way to get the injured out. Soldiers clung to them, crying from pain, whispering prayers, gripping the metal bars with shaking hands. The jeep sped through muddy tracks, engines straining, tires sliding, but still pushing forward. Many soldiers later said, "The jeep saved me." Not a jeep. Not the jeep. But the jeep, as if it were a single living being that came when they needed it most. Imagine the feeling of lying on the back of a jeep while the world blurs past. The pain is sharp. The air is cold. Your eyes barely stay open. But you feel the bumps, the jumps, the turns. You hear the engine trying its best. And you think, just get me out of here. And somehow the jeep does. No other machine of the war carried such a mixture of fear, relief, pain, and gratitude. And on the other side, German soldiers felt a different emotion, frustration mixed with admiration. They could not deny what they were seeing. Their own light vehicles could not match the jeep's performance. Their motorcycles tipped. Their small cars broke. Their heavier vehicles were too slow. Captured jeeps became prized possessions. Soldiers cleaned them carefully. Mechanics worked on them with excitement. Officers claimed them for important missions. In some cases, German units had more American jeeps than German vehicles. That is how much they depended on them. Human stories from the war often mention the jeep as if it were a character, a quiet partner that shared danger, hardship, hope, and exhaustion. One soldier wrote in his journal, "When everything else stopped, the jeep kept going. It was like a reminder that we could keep going too." Another said, the Jeep carried more than equipment. It carried our courage. When we look at the war from above, through maps and timelines, it is easy to forget the emotions inside it. But when we look from the ground, from the eyes of soldiers who walked and fought and suffered, we see the truth more clearly. The Jeep was not only a tool. It was a lifeline. It was not only a machine. It was a companion. It did not just move through war. It moved through human hearts. And this emotional connection, felt on both sides of the conflict, became one of the quiet reasons the Jeep reshaped the battlefield. Machines alone do not change wars. People do. But people are changed by the machines they trust. And the Jeep earned that trust again and again, mile after mile, through mud, snow, fire, darkness, fear, and hope. When we look back at history, it is easy to believe that great events are driven only by powerful leaders, giant machines, or dramatic battles. But sometimes, history changes because of something small. Something simple. Something that works quietly in the background until its value can no longer be ignored. The Jeep is one of those rare reminders that strength does not always come from size. Sometimes it comes from purpose. From design. From understanding what truly matters in a world filled with noise, fear, and confusion. As the war continued, German officers faced a difficult truth. They had built machines to impress. Machines that symbolized pride, precision, and engineering skill. But they had not built machines for imperfect roads, impossible terrain, or unpredictable weather. They had not built machines that could change their shape, their role, or their purpose in a moment of need. America had. Perhaps that is why the Jeep touched something deeper in the minds of soldiers. It showed them a different way to think about strength. It suggested that power is not always loud, and victory is not always won by the biggest force. Often, it is won by the tool that adapts the fastest. This idea is quiet, but it is powerful. War forces people to question everything. Their beliefs, their leaders, their machines, even themselves. And in that questioning, the Jeep stood as a simple answer: move forward, even when the road disappears. There is something almost poetic about that. Something that goes beyond war. Because all of us, in our own lives, face landscapes that feel difficult to cross. We face hills that seem too steep, mud that slows progress, storms that make the future unclear. We face moments when we doubt ourselves or the tools we depend on. And in those moments, we often look for big solutions, strong words, powerful plans, impressive tools. But sometimes, the real solution is something simple. Something steady. Something that keeps going even when everything else stops. The Jeep became a symbol of that idea. A symbol of resilience. A symbol of adaptability. A symbol of quiet strength. For the German soldiers, this symbol created a strange mix of emotions. They admired it even as it challenged them. They used it even as it belonged to their enemy. They trusted it even when their own machines let them down. That emotional conflict revealed something important. Sometimes the truth is bigger than pride. Sometimes respect grows in unexpected places, even in the middle of war. When the war finally ended, many soldiers returned home with stories about tanks, battles, and near escapes. But countless soldiers, both American and German, also told stories about the Jeep. They remembered the places it carried them. The danger it helped them escape. The quiet comfort it offered when fear felt overwhelming. They spoke of the Jeep as if it were alive. Maybe that is what happens when a machine becomes part of your survival. It becomes more than metal. It becomes a companion. And long after the war, when the world began to rebuild itself, the Jeep's spirit continued to shape things. Engineers studied its design. Armies built new vehicles inspired by its simplicity. Civilians began using Jeeps for farming, rescue work, travel, and adventure. It became a symbol of freedom, the ability to go anywhere, explore anything, and face difficult paths with confidence. It is remarkable to think that something created for war became a symbol of exploration and hope. But perhaps this is the natural journey of a tool that understands movement. A tool that encourages people to look at the horizon and say, yes, I can reach that. The Jeep teaches us one more lesson, a lesson the German army learned the hard way. Innovation does not always look impressive at first. Sometimes it looks strange. Sometimes it looks too small. Sometimes it looks too simple. But innovation is not about the appearance of strength. It is about solving the right problem at the right time. Germany solved the wrong problems. America solved the right one. Germany built machines for control. America built a machine for survival. Germany trusted weight. America trusted movement. And movement won. When historians talk about the Allied victory, they mention strategies, supply lines, and industrial power. But hidden inside those explanations is a small heartbeat, The heartbeat of a simple engine that kept turning, kept climbing, kept crossing, kept carrying. The Jeep did not win the war alone. But it changed how the war was fought. It cracked German confidence. It pushed German soldiers to question their own machines. It taught armies around the world that flexibility is as important as firepower. Even today, when we look at photographs from World War II, the Jeep appears again and again, not as a symbol of aggression but as a symbol of endurance. It sits in snow, surrounded by tired soldiers. It rests in mud, its wheels coated but still strong. It climbs hills that look impossible. It crosses rivers that seem too wide. It appears beside medics carrying wounded men. Beside officers studying maps. Beside troops returning from patrol. Beside humanity in its most vulnerable moments. It is a reminder that in the darkest times, the simplest tools can shine the brightest. And so we return to the beginning of our story, to the German soldiers who laughed at the Jeep when they first saw it crossing a field. They believed it was a toy, a weak machine unfit for the seriousness of war. They did not know that this toy would soon be inside their own camps, carrying their own wounded, guiding their own scouts, and reshaping their own tactics. They did not know that this small machine would expose the weaknesses of their proud designs. They did not know that this quiet vehicle, with no armor and no heavy weapon, would challenge their confidence more deeply than any tank. History is full of surprises. And sometimes, the biggest surprise is how wrong we can be about the things we underestimate. The Jeep is a reminder of that truth. A reminder that the world does not always reward the biggest, the loudest, or the most complex. Sometimes it rewards the machine, or the person, who simply refuses to stop. As we close this story, imagine once more that quiet battlefield. Snow falling softly. Smoke drifting above ruined buildings. The wind carrying the faint sound of engines far away. Through this landscape, a Jeep moves slowly forward, its tires gripping the frozen earth. Inside it sits a soldier who has seen too much, felt too much, but still believes in the next mile. The Jeep carries him onward, step by step, through a world that is broken but still full of possibility. In this moment, the Jeep is more than a vehicle. It is a symbol of the human spirit, simple, steady, and unstoppable. And perhaps, in the end, that is how it truly reshaped the war.